The China Mental Health Survey reveals that 6.8% of adults experience depressive disorders in their lifetime, with 3.4% specifically suffering from depression. Currently, 95 million people in China live with depression, and approximately 280,000 individuals take their own lives each year, 40% of whom have depression. Depression is a pressing global health issue affecting populations worldwide. By 2015, it impacted 320 million people globally. In other words, nearly one-third of the world's depression patients reside in China, a nation often hailed as a miracle. Yet, with only 17% of the global population, why does China have such a disproportionately high number of depressed individuals? These stark figures cut deeper than any grand narrative. They mean that in subways, office buildings, schools, or even at the local market, 1 out of every dozen people may be silently battling depression. They might not admit they're struggling, they might still be holding on, but they could already be slipping quietly into despair. This is not fiction, it's a raw, painful reality. Unlike cancer, depression doesn't visibly ravage the body, nor does it sweep in like an infectious disease. Instead, it's like a silent hand tightening around someone's throat. The Global Burden of Disease study has long warned that depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide. It may not kill directly, but it can strip a person of their ability to function, to work, to be themselves for decades. Globally, depression leads to economic losses exceeding $1 trillion annually. Yet, in China, a nation proud of its diligence, courage, and wisdom, this invisible crisis is hitting harder than anywhere else. Why is China so severely affected? First, its massive population. Even if the prevalence of depression matches global averages, the sheer number of people ensures China tops the list. The 2023 China National Mental Health Development Report states that 6.8% of adults have a lifetime prevalence of depressive disorders, with 3.4% facing severe depression. These single-digit percentages, when multiplied by 1.4 billion people, translate to 95 million to 100 million individuals. Second, China is aging rapidly. In 2024, over 210 million people, 15.4% of the population, are over 65, and depression rates among the elderly are typically higher than among younger groups. As the population continues to age in the coming decades, the number of depression cases will only grow. Even more concerning, elderly individuals with depression are at high risk of sliding toward suicide. Speaking of suicide, the statistics are chilling. The World Health Organization reports that around 700,000 people die by suicide globally each year, with depression as the leading risk factor. In China, annual suicide deaths have ranged between 250,000 and 280,000 for years. Studies show that 40% to 50% of these individuals suffered from depression or mood disorders, meaning over 100,000 people end their lives annually due to depression. Behind these cold numbers lie countless broken families and silent cries. You might assume that overworked young men are the most likely to take their lives, but in China, the high-risk groups are women and the elderly. Rural women, crushed by poverty and family pressures, and isolated elderly people worn down by illness and neglect are driven to desperation. This is the harsh reality of a society slipping into darkness. Even more disheartening is China's medical void. You might expect such a grave issue to be a national priority, but the reality is grim. According to the China Mental Health Survey, only 9.5% of depression patients received any professional treatment in the past year. In other words, 9 out of 10 people with depression go untreated. Worse still, among the few who do seek help, less than 1% receive adequate treatment in terms of duration and dosage. In essence, depression patients in China are largely left to fend for themselves. In contrast, high-income countries achieve treatment rates of around 40% or more, while China struggles to reach 10%. The shortage of psychiatrists is stark. Fewer than 60,000 registered psychiatrists serve the entire nation, averaging just 4.2 per 100,000 people, compared to 13 in the US and 27 in Japan. In practical terms, a county with hundreds of thousands of residents might have only 1 or 2 psychiatrists, or none at all. Patients must either travel to overcrowded urban clinics or face a dead end. Why is treatment so scarce? Beyond the lack of medical resources, cultural and social barriers play a significant role. In China, mental illness is often stigmatized as madness or weakness. Many families prefer to hide the issue, Patients hesitate to speak up and loved ones avoid the topic, believing it can be overcome by sheer willpower. As a result, those who seek help are rare, and many more choose silence or succumb to despair. Compounding this, health insurance offers minimal coverage for mental health, and medications are costly. Treatment is a long, complex process, with a single doctor's visit costing hundreds or even thousands of yuan, an unaffordable sum for many families. Thus, those with depression are left to struggle in the shadows. The social climate makes matters worse. Chinese society celebrates relentless effort and perseverance, often labeling those who are emotionally struggling as fragile or useless. Some would rather toil in their cubicles until dawn than admit they're unwell. In this culture, depression isn't seen as an illness but as a mark of shame. This explains why some, despite severe illness, maintain a facade of normalcy on social media, or why someone might laugh with colleagues over dinner and then leap from a building. For depression patients in China, there is no safe haven. While the government focuses on slogans and grand visions of national rejuvenation, countless individuals weep in the dark. Amid the rhetoric of progress, these seemingly small issues are often ignored. But 100 million people with depression is not a small issue. They are living individuals, the backbone of families. Neglecting them will exact a heavy toll on society as a whole. In recent years, China's economy has faltered, with GDP growth in 2024 at just 4.5%. Well below the historical average since reform and opening up. The bursting real estate bubble, manufacturing overcapacity, and persistent youth unemployment aren't just numbers, they're crushing weights on every individual's heart. According to China's National Bureau of Statistics, the unemployment rate for 16 to 24-year-olds neared 20% in 2024. This means 1 in 5 young people cannot find work. For recent graduates, unemployment is not just a financial blow but a psychological collapse. A 2023 Peking University study found that over 40% of unemployed youth exhibited depressive symptoms, with the rate soaring further if unemployment lasted over 6 months. Young people meant to be society's future are being pushed into a depressive abyss at the peak of their lives. This is the vicious cycle of economy and mental health. Economic decline breeds unemployment, debt, and anxiety, while mental health issues further sap social vitality, making recovery even harder. The nation feels like it's spiraling into a black hole. Meanwhile, China is aging rapidly. By 2035, the National Bureau of Statistics projects that over 400 million people, 30% of the population, will be over 65. The greatest hidden crisis of aging is elderly depression. A 2022 study in the Lancet Psychiatry found that nearly 20% of Chinese people over 60 suffer from depression, meaning tens of millions could face silent darkness in the future. Society's attitude toward the elderly only worsens this. Overburdened care facilities, medical costs, unemployed children, and fractured families leave the elderly isolated and helpless. Many who develop depression are not only uncared for, but shunned. Society's dismissive attitude toward aging cuts away their remaining dignity like an invisible blade. This explains why the elderly make up a disproportionately high share of China's suicide statistics. According to the China Center for Disease Control and Prevention, rural elderly suicide rates are 3 times those of urban elderly. In villages without social security, companionship, or medicine, suicide becomes the only escape from suffering. Depression doesn't only affect the elderly, young people in China are equally vulnerable. The education system is a pressure cooker. From elementary school, children are thrust into exams for college, graduate school, or studying abroad. Mental health takes a back seat to grades, rankings, and the narrow margins that define their futures. Data from the China Youth Research Center shows that over 30% of middle school students exhibit depressive tendencies. Entering the workforce brings another ordeal. 996 work schedules, layoffs, and relentless competition leave young people walking a tightrope daily. In 2024, major tech firms laid off tens of thousands overnight. Some, stripped of income, posted a final sorry on Weibo before jumping from rented high-rises. Families offer no refuge. Instead, conflicts often become the final straw. Traditional Chinese values still demand marriage and career success, but soaring housing prices make marriage a luxury. According to the Beiko Research Institute in 2024, the national average housing price remains 15,000 yuan per square meter. A young person in a big city, even skipping meals, would need decades to afford a small apartment. Housing, marriage, and child-rearing pile on, and depression haunts the younger generation like a specter. The true suffocation comes from the desert of mental health care. As of 2024, China has only 360,000 psychiatric beds, or 26 per 100,000 people, half the WHO's recommended minimum of 50. With fewer than 60,000 psychiatrists, each doctor is responsible for roughly 23,000 patients, an impossible burden. Many patients wait months for an appointment or simply give up. Even those willing to seek help face inadequate insurance coverage and high drug costs. Psychological counseling is a luxury, starting at 500 yuan per session, with top experts charging up to 2,000 yuan per hour, an unthinkable expense for those earning 4,000 to 5,000 yuan monthly. As a result, ordinary people are left to endure, self-medicate, or secretly buy drugs online. Those without resources are slowly consumed by loneliness. Depression's terror lies not just in the illness, but in society's indifference. In China, depression is often dismissed as overthinking or being too sensitive. Some tell patients to just go for a run and they'll be fine. Such flippant remarks don't help. They deepen patients' self-blame, pulling them further into despair. The government, preoccupied with national rejuvenation, carbon goals, and technological independence, remains largely indifferent to these invisible illnesses. Depression doesn't produce GDP or political accolades, so it's relegated behind countless other priorities. But when a society has over 100 million people in a depressive state, this is not just a medical issue, it's a social, economic, and even national security concern. Falling productivity, rising healthcare costs, and declining birth rates are all ripple effects of depression. China's depression is no longer an individual affliction. It's a societal disease, intertwined with aging, unemployment, debt, education, and housing costs. It's a vast, dark web that can ensnare anyone, leaving them to struggle and suffocate with no rescue in sight. Looking ahead, China's future could be even bleaker. With an aging population, ongoing economic pressures, unemployed youth, and lonely elderly, the number of depression cases will likely climb. China risks becoming the world's largest mental health crisis zone. This isn't fear-mongering, it's the logical conclusion of the data. Many say China is not a place for ordinary people to live, as their pains and tears are often dismissed. Only the diligent, brave, and wise are expected to endure. But can they truly endure? When 100 million people are trapped by depression, when over 90% receive no treatment, and society and government remain silent, how far can China go? Thanks for watching and joining us on this journey to unveil China's many layers. If you found this video insightful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with others, and hit that subscribe button to stay updated. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching and joining us on this journey to unveil China's many layers. If you found this video insightful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with others, and hit that subscribe button to stay updated. See you in the next video.